the 1910s, sometimes through to 1939. They always had an air-cooled motorbike engine, usually a JAP or a Nexus. They went out of production. There was another more than three-wheeler post-war with a water-cooled engine. Tony Divey was sort of into Morgans, didn't have one at the time. He was an interesting guy. He was working for Lotus. He's a technical artist. He'd also did some work on the Airbus and the DeLorean, things like that. So he was in the kind of motoring world. He decided to use a Moto Guzzi engine because it was their rugged, air-cooled, and sort of fit the bill, and their shaft drive, which means that instead of having chain drive to the back wheel, things are a bit more civilised. He made the first one, which he ended up doing, he claimed 600,000 miles in, and took to show his boss, Colin Chapman, and the first guy to take it for a test drive after Tony Divey drove it to Lotus was Mario Andretti, who happened to be there. And then Colin Chapman took it for a drive. And you look at the photo of the first one, and you look at the ones that are still being cranked out now, and they haven't changed much. So he obviously was quite a talented sort of a guy to get things pretty right the first time around. He made the first one, people were interested, he started making them as a kit, and also as a turnkey car. To start with, he would, to begin with, they had a Moto Guzzi gearbox, which is what this one has. They did make, at one stage, a conversion to have the slightly different chassis, to have a 5-speed forward gearbox instead. Production they've made, I don't know how many they've made. In 2012, they've made about 150, 160. The factory's still going, although the factory is, it's a converted garage outside someone's house. It's nothing too serious. They've probably made about 300 of them, I think, by now. Motorbike guy, always been interested in 50s British bikes, which is what I've done mostly over the years, and didn't frankly have much interest in cars, but was keen to get something that I could use to drive to work and things where motorbikes are a bit of a handful. I'd always wanted a three-wheeler. I was aware of the Triking, and there was a really nice guy called Victor. I don't know what's his last name, don't remember his last name, some of you guys might know. He's dead now. He was sort of big in the motorbike scene in the 70s. Lived down the bottom of No Gorge, and he had one painted tan in colour. I knocked on his door, and he took me for a drive up the gorge, which was pretty terrifying. I think he was going blind by then.
Was he a little wee short guy?
Yeah, little guy.
Yeah, he brought his one in here about 10 years ago.
Yeah, okay, it's past now. So he took me for a drive, which was really cool, and that was because I'd already decided I probably wanted to get one, but I didn't want to get one and find out that it was rubbish. So in terms of this particular car, I ordered the kit in probably 2015, 2016. It took a while to arrive. Went down the road of getting LVVTA type approval because you spend quite a bit of money. I think the kit, when I bought it, the kit was about £8,000 plus some extras, plus freight, plus GST, etc. And then you get a pallet that turns up at Port Wellington, and take it home and try to figure it out. The kit was really, because I've been mucking around with old motorbikes for 30 years, my expectations were pretty low. And honestly, assembling it, it really was there's a little bit of welding for the back brake, a few little things to modify, a bit of gluing, but it was pretty much, you could do it with a set of ring spanners and an electric drill, and when I tell people I built the car, it's kind of talking it up a little bit. there really wasn't much to it. Took a little while, as these things do, but I mean, it was drivable within sort of 6 or 7 months, I think, of arriving on the doorstep. So it's got a 1996 Moto Guzzi California engine. You can fit any Moto Guzzi from 500cc through to about 1100cc to these. This one's a 1064. They're a real workhorse, originally designed as or they're derived from an engine that was designed for military use in a 3-wheeler. But of course, famously, Moto Guzzi became a big motorbike manufacturer, so the Le Mans, etc., have all got this set up. 9.5 to 1 compression, obviously air cooled, 36mm slide type carburetors. The engine drives the Moto Guzzi clutch, which drives the Moto Guzzi gearbox. Behind that, there's a Nova Racing reversing gearbox, which is just straight drive through when you're going forwards, but it's got a chain and once you slip into reverse, that means you've actually got 5 reverse gears if you want them. There's a few drive shafts, so you've got a little drive shaft behind the gearbox to the reversing gearbox, another drive shaft from reversing gearbox to the swing arm. Because the Guzzi was a shaft drive, it's pretty straightforward. It's just got Guzzi universals at the various connections, and the drive shaft runs through the middle of the swing arm. Guzzi drive box. Honestly, there was very little left of the motorbike when I finished assembling the car. There was a front wheel and forks and a frame, but the electrics, carbs, the exhausts. I did use the car mufflers initially, but because it was actually, by the time I was using it, it was a 20-year-old bike, the exhausts were a bit rotten. So Damon from Wakatara was Cycle Works made some replicas, which he did a really lovely job of. It's been really good. The only maintenance issues I've had have been of my own making and haven't been too daunting. I burned through a universal joint fairly quickly because I hadn't really got things aligned as I should. So really that, had to replace the clutch plate, but that's just maintenance. The bike had already done 58,000 Ks when I got it and put it in the car. It's done 106,000 now, so it's done about 48,000 Ks of the car. I cocked up a spacer in the back wheel and had it a side over on the rear wheel bearings, so I can replace those. But other than that, it's actually only been valve clearances, oil changes, had a lot of the cracking in the exhausts early on. James Soleil fixed those up. So yeah, it's been really good fun. It's been quite easy. It's a fun car to drive. I don't use it every day, but almost every day. If it's pissing with rain, then it's not that much fun. But if it's cloudy and it might rain, then I just take it to work because I can. And last year, my son rode off his Corolla, which meant that he got given the Nissan, which meant that the BMW went to Sally, which meant that this was my only car all winter last year. So it is a proper daily drive. Although at the moment I've got the luxury of jumping into a 15-year-old Japanese car if it's really bucketing down. It handles, it's well designed. Ultimately, it's got 3 wheels, not 4. The front ones are skinny. It understeers when you get into a corner. If you hit the gas, then the back sort of catches up. It would be quite easy to get into trouble in the wet if you were too enthusiastic. But it's quite well mannered. you can drive it long distance. When I first got it going, took it up to the top of Coromandel and over the Whangamana Road and up to Taranaki and did those sorts of things. And I use it a bit to pop up to Palmerston for work or those sorts of trips. It's a little bit noisy. The exhaust note isn't too bad, but road noise, wind noise, and it's they're rattly old things. So there's quite a lot of valve clatter which kind of finds its way into the cockpit, and a fair bit of intake noise as well, because the side carbs just breathe through a couple of Canadian filters which are tucked up just above your feet. It's been great fun. Get a lot of attention in it, which is great if you're having a quiet day and feel like chatting. Sometimes a little bit much attention if you're trying to get through the day. My wife Sally thinks it's the most ridiculous thing she's ever seen. She calls it my tricycle, which I think is a successful attempt to infantilise it in me. She rarely goes in it, but I did have a bit of revenge the other day. We went to the hardware store and I was just popping in, so I left her sitting in the passenger seat. I came back and there was this sort of horseshoe of 6 older gentlemen standing around, talking to each other. They didn't know each other, they were talking to each other, looking at the car, and Sally was sitting there stone-faced, daring them to try to speak with her. Anyway, so I would, if anyone is interested in them, the guy who makes them, Alan Lazell, over in the UK, is a super helpful, nice guy. It's a cottage industry thing. He worked for Tony Divey, the original guy, for 20 years or so, and took over when Tony got sick. He's still making them. The whole LVV experience for me was, I was really impressed. It was really straightforward. There was a fair bit to do, but because I knew that I was going to be throwing some money at the kit, going through the technical assistance committee, or whatever it's called, to get approval on the plans first, meant that I knew that as long as I didn't really stuff it up, I'd end up with something that I could register and drive around. So that felt pretty good. Julian Chair did the compliance stuff on it and was super constructive. There were bits and pieces that had to be modified or replaced from the kit components to meet the LVV requirements, but those requirements were mostly pretty sensible. It was the things that you hear about a bit. Well, the steering column wasn't acceptable. I was a little bit annoyed to have to baffle the fuel tank, given that it's about that wide, but that's kind of one of the rules for scratch build, apparently. Other than that, it was making it into a better car, having a proper firewall behind the engine, guards on the fuel lines, adjusting the steering rack a bit to get the bump steer to within compliance. But it was all reasonable and pretty sensible sort of stuff. And Julian was a really nice fella to deal with. I can imagine, because of all the bike stuff I've done, how frustrating it must be for people if they pull their heart and soul into something in the garage and then turn up and get told, well, no, you can't use this on the road. But having known that that was how it could roll, me going about it the right way was pretty straightforward. I did bring a quote this evening from a motoring journalist. No ladies in the room. Andrew English of the Telegraph, in his review of the Triking, the intimacy is both profound, delightful, and for the claustrophobic, disturbing. Everything is so contiguous with the driver, you could have sex at greater distance than this. And it is a tight squeeze. But yeah, it's been good. It's been great. So if anyone wants to have a chat about it afterwards, or has any questions, or there's anything obvious that you expect me to tell you that I haven't, then feel free to fire away. But that's kind of what I know.
How good's it on gas? Like, is it pretty economical?
Yeah, it's uses a wee bit more than a motorbike. I mean, it's not very aerodynamic, but it only weighs 370 kilos wet, so there's not that much of a shift around. I don't have miles per gallon figures. I know that I gas it up every 250 k's, and it takes about 15 litres when I gas it up. So it's not too bad. And if you're going on a trip or something, you feel like a stop after that anyway. It's pretty comfortable. I mean, anything where you're sitting down low with your legs out in front of you takes a wee bit of getting used to, but the seats are quite nice, and the suspension, it's pretty basic stuff. It's Hagen, which is a British made motorcycle suspension, which they're aftermarket, but you'd be pushing it to describe it as an upgrade on most factory suspension, but they're perfectly competent. Doesn't have a huge amount of travel, but the string rates, which are all selected by Alan over in the UK, are about right, so it makes good use of the suspension that it has, and it doesn't clonk or rattle or anything. So you go flying over a speed bump, and it just does about 20 psi in the front tyres. The wheels, motorcycle type wheels with the hubs are made by Triking. They're just turned out of billet. Motorbike wheels, as any sidecarist will tell you, are good in the application of what they're designed for, but when you're putting side loads through them, like you do on a sidecar or that you do on this, you tend to get through a fair few spokes. So when I go on trips, you want to carry enough tools to be able to pop a tyre off and replace a couple of spokes. But no, there's really been, touch wood, but there's been nothing maintenance wise which has caused me any concern. One minor frustration, which I think is probably not uncommon for people who are adapting motorbike stuff for cars, the carburetors are designed to be gravity fed, and the fuel tank, as you'll see, is in the back. So it's got a low pressure fuel pump which feeds the carbs, and that's okay. There's a fuel pressure regulator and a line running back to the fuel tank to keep the pressure down. Got it down to under 1.5 psi, but still a wee bit much for the carbs. So if you go around a corner reasonably quickly and you're on a trailing throttle, then it richens up. It doesn't bother you if you're sort of heading up a hill or whatever, because your throttles are up and wide enough to its throat carries on, but it could cut out onto one and smell a bit petrol-y. But that's actually the only thing that I would regard as being a niggle, other than the fact it doesn't have a roof and obvious things. So it's something I might try to do something about. Someone here might have some clever ideas about how to replicate a gravity-fed system with a soil plot or something. But I got quite excited about it for the first 6 or 12 months when it was new and I was burning around in it, going a little bit faster than I should and all that stuff. But I just kind of maybe slow down a little bit. It doesn't really cause any problems, so I haven't got around to it.
Does it have any room for luggage at all?
Yeah, it's not too bad. It's got, it's got a rack. You can put the bag on that, and behind the seats you can fit, some clothes and a work. I can fit files in there or whatever. For a holiday for 2 people, it's again, if you approach it comparing it to a family car, not great, but it's just like a motorbike. You just pack so that you've got comfortable driving gear and not too much else. But yeah, plenty of room for underpants and toothbrushes.
Nice.
Oh, if no one else has got any more questions, yeah, feel free to chat to Rohan once we'll wrap up now, I think. But yeah, I really appreciate that. Something